Hi Santosh, good morning.
Morning, Srikanth.
Yeah, Santosh, go through your topic.
Yeah, okay, Srikanth. Yeah, Srikanth. Today in this topic, we are going to discuss about the attribute dimension. Before going to discuss this PPT, let us see what is there in this PPT. In this PPT, we are going to discuss about the topics related to attribute dimensions. And here we will see how we will use these attribute dimensions in the following artifacts like data forms and runtime prompts and business rules and smart view. And after that we will go and first let us see what is an attribute dimension. The attribute dimension is a special type of dimension that is associated with the business dimension, and this attribute dimension consists of members, and these members can classify the members of another business dimensions. So we use this attribute dimension to categorize the data uh, combine the members as one category. So we will use this attribute dimension for the categorizing of members. So let us see what is an attribute in general. First, the attribute in general means through attribute we can describe the characteristics of a data. For example, let's take a product. We can describe its characteristic by the product color or product shape or product size. We can describe the attribute by we can describe the data by their size or shape or color. Like that we can describe an attribute. We use the attributes for describing a data. And now for here he has say, here he has asked that can you give me an example for an attribute in the Amazon app. So in the Amazon app, if you want to buy an cricket bat from the Amazon app, so under the cricket bat, you can see the attributes like the bat size and the bat color. Like that, you can see the attributes. With the use of that attribute, we can select the bat size and shape. Like that, we can categorize the data and we can see the characteristics of the data. And can you explain the difference between a standard dimension and an attribute dimension means? And these standard dimensions are used in the business process where we make the calculations in our application, and the attribute dimensions are used for just for reporting the data. And in which case do you prefer the attribute dimension over the standard dimension means? While categorizing the data to describe the characteristics of data, then we use this attribute dimension over the standard dimension. And here we will see the question that can we assign an attribute dimension to a dense or sparse dimension? We can assign an attribute dimension to a dense or sparse dimension, but we cannot create an attribute dimension to a dense dimension. We can only create the attribute dimension to sparse dimensions only. So in this, we will see how to create this attribute dimension. For this, we will go to the application and we will go to the dimensions under create and manage. Here I'm selecting, here you can see that the account dimension is the dense dimension and remaining all are sparse dimensions. So for the account dimension, we cannot create the custom attributes. We cannot create the custom attributes. For entity dimension, we can create the custom attribute. You can see here. Yeah, you can give add the custom attribute here by providing the name. Like I will give the product, and I am taking the data type as the text. So the product is already existed, so I will take as shape. I'm saving it. So now the attribute dimension shape has been created, and if you want to add the members under that attribute dimension, you can add it here by clicking on add child. We can add like a rectangle. So like this, we can add the childs to this attribute dimension. So now I'm closing this. We have seen how to create an attribute dimension. So now we will go to the presentation and see, can you show me how to assign an attribute dimension to a standard dimension? So for this, we will go to the application and we will see, we'll take the entity dimension and we will take one member. So I'm taking the C100 here, and now I am associating with, I am assigning the attribute to this member. So here I am taking this shape and I am associating this rectangle to this member. So after that, we will save this. After saving this, the attribute member has been added to that, assigned to this entity member. So now let's go to the PPT in the meanwhile. And now we will see, we have seen that how we will assign the attribute dimension to a standard dimensions in the dimensions. So we will go to the next slide. And here we will see how we will use these attribute dimensions in the data forms. So here he asked that, can you explain how to use the attribute dimension in the data form in the page drop down and show me how the standard dimension members are filtered. For that, he has given the tip for use any of the existing attribute dimension. If not available, create one as below hierarchy. So we will go to the application and we will see the entity. We'll take the entity dimension here, and now we will create the hierarchy according to the presentation. So we will go to the attribute dimensions here. We will go to the attribute dimensions, and I have already created the region attribute dimension according to the presentation. I am already having the region attribute dimension. In this, I have the members like Asia Pacific, Europe, USA, and Middle East Asia. These members in the PPT are in the entity dimension. So now we will see how we will use these members in the page in the data form. So we will go to the application and we will open the forms. We are opening the forms here, and I'm taking the attribute dimension form. I'm taking the form and click on edit. So we will go to the layout. Yeah, here you can see the attribute dimensions which we have created in our application. So here I am choosing the region and I am taking this region to paste and adding the members. Here I am taking the region including children. So now after this, we will save this and I will preview the form. So here you can see in this drop down, you can select and filter the members under the region attribute dimension. If you want the Europe means, you can select it and you can click on OK. Like this, you can filter the members under the region attribute dimension. Like this, we use the attribute dimensions in the page. So next, he has asked to use this attribute dimensions in the POV and rows and columns. So we'll go to the application and I will bring this attribute dimension to the column. So here I will take the member as a USA or Europe. I will remove the existing member and I'm taking the USA member here. After that, I am clicking on OK and I will change this member also. I'm removing the existing member and taking the Asia Pacific. I'm clicking on OK. So now we will save this and we will preview the form. And now you can see in the columns the members of attribute dimensions has been added here, the USA and the Asia Pacific. Like this, we can use the attribute dimension in the columns. And now let us see how to use the attribute dimension in the rows. Now I have selected the USA and the rows. So I will save this and I will preview this. So you can see that in the rows, the USA member of region attribute dimension has been added here. So like this, we can use this attribute dimension in the rows. So we have seen that how to use the attribute dimensions in the POV and rows and columns. Now we will see how to use these attribute dimensions in the RTP. So here he asked that can we assign the attribute dimension or attribute dimension members in the RTP? And if yes, can you show me how to assign attribute dimensions or attribute dimension members in the RTP? And can you show me how only a few attribute dimension limited in the RTP? That is Asia Pacific and Europe. We will go to our application and see these things. And for this, we must go to the application navigator. And now I will select the rules under create and manage. Create and manage. And now under actions, I will select the variable designer here. And now I'm selecting the application and I'm selecting the console cube here. And now I'm clicking on actions and clicking on new so that we can add the attribute RTP. So I am giving the RTP name as RTP underscore attribute. So I'm taking the type as member. So after that, we will select the dimension attribute member. These are all the system and custom attribute dimensions. So I'm taking the region that I have created in the application, and I'm using this RTP checkbox. After that, we can use the limit column. So under this, we can select the function or member here. So if you want to add the function means we will click on this function and we'll take the @ attribute and we can add the members here. So now I am using the members here. So I'm taking the members under limit and limiting the attribute dimension to particular members according to the presentation. So in this region, in the presentation, he has said to take the Asia Pacific and the Europe. Taking these two members and clicking on OK. So the attribute dimension members have been added to the limits column. Now under the default value, again we will click on this, and now I will take the function. And here you can see all the functions that are available in our application. We can use any of the functions based upon our requirement. Now I'm using the attribute function here. I'm taking the attribute function and adding the member here. I'm adding the member here. So now we will select the region attribute dimension. And now I will expand this and I will take the Europe, Asia Pacific and click on OK. So after this, we will provide the RTP text like give the enter the attribute. So after giving the text RTP text, we will save this RTP. So I'm saving this RTP. So the RTP has been saved successfully. Now we'll copy this. We'll go to the system view and now we will take the rule. Before creating these business rules, we'll go to the presentation and see. Now in the RTPs, we have taken the attribute dimension members and assigned that attribute dimension members in the RTP, and we have limited the attribute dimension members to the Asia Pacific and Europe. And next we will see the business rules. And in this how we'll create the business rule and how we will assign the attributes to the business rule, we will see. So we'll go to the application, and now here we are creating the business rule. So under this rules, we will select the rules and go to the actions and click on new object, so that we can add a new rule. So I'm giving that rule object type as the rule and name as attribute rule. So after this, we'll click on OK. So now the attribute rule has been created and it is open for editing. So after clicking on OK, the attribute rule will be open. So here we will provide the script for adding the attribute, adding the RTP here, adding the RTP into our business rule. So RTP attribute. We will fix this. We have written the script for the adding the RTP into the business rule. So after this, we will click on this save and validate. So now the validation will be started, and see whether there are any validation errors or not. So after the validation, you can see the RTP attribute will be added here under this variables. So it will take a 2 minutes time. So now the rule was validated with no errors and save. So we'll click on OK now. So after this, if you open this variables means, you can see that RTP attribute RTP has been added under this rule. So after this, we will deploy this rule to the application. So we will deploy the rule. We'll click on deploy, and now the rule has been deploying into the application. So once the rule has been deployed into the application, we can go to the business rules and see the rule that we have created now. So here the deployment was successful, and we will click on OK now. And now we will close this. We will leave this and we will go to the application, and we'll go to the home page. And now we will see the business rule that we have created now, that is attribute. Just refresh it. So here the attribute rule has been added here. So we will click on launch. So here you can see the attribute, enter the attribute RTP in the business rule. Like this, we can add the RTPs in the business rule, and we can use the RTPs in the business rule. So we'll go to the presentation and see here. Can you show me at least two functions of an attribute in the business rule? I have already shown that how we will add the functions in the business rules while creating the RTPs. So now randomly select an attribute dimension. So we will see these expectations. So we will go to the application, and here randomly we can select any of the member here, attribute dimension member, and we can click on the launch. So like this, we can use the business rules. Like this, we can use the attribute dimensions in the business rules. And now let's go to the presentation and see how we will use these attribute dimensions in the smart view. For this, we will go to the smart view. So here under this, we will take the blank workbook, and we will select the smart view and click on panel, and we will select the private connections here, and we will select the smart view, and we will provide the login credentials, and we will log into your smart view. So I'm giving the login. login credentials. We will expand this application FCCS2 and we will open the form that we have created for the attribute dimensions. This attribute one form, and we will open it through ad hoc analysis. So get like this, we'll go to the options and we will remove this checkbox suppress missing blocks. We will uncheck this suppress missing blocks and click on OK. And now we will select the form and take the ad hoc analysis. So now you can see the form here. So you can randomly add the. So can you show me how to insert an attribute into the smart view? So we will see how to insert an attribute like Europe. And now refresh. So the attribute dimension member has been added across this data form. Like this, you can add or use the attribute dimension members in the smart view. And again, it has asked to show the report with the attribute dimension, so that for this we will add one column, one row here. We will insert one row. So here I am taking the attribute dimension name as a region, and now I'm refreshing it. Okay, just a minute. We'll take another from here, the attribute form 1, and let us see. Yeah, here I will add one more row here, and I will take and now I'm adding it. So now you can see that how the attribute dimension has been added to across this data form. Like this, we can add the attribute dimension, and if you want to add the attribute member means just refresh it, so that the attribute dimension members can be added into the smart view, and randomly we can select any of the member and we can take randomly use any of the members under the region attribute dimensions. So we have seen how to use these attribute dimensions in the smart view. So we have discussed in this PPT about the following things, like how we will use this attribute dimension in data forms, and how we will use this runtime, how we will use this attribute dimension in the runtime prompts, and how we will create the runtime prompts, and how we will use add these runtime prompts to the business rules and attribute dimensions in the business rules. And we have seen how we will use the attribute dimensions in the smart view also. So that's all for this PPT. Thank you, Srikanth.
Yeah, thank you, Santosh.